Look closely at this map. Right here, nestled between Oman and Iran, lies a narrow strip of water just 21 miles wide at its absolute narrowest point. This is the Strait of Hormuz. Historically, about a third of the world's seaborne oil passes through this tiny bottleneck. But for the last 6 weeks, it's been the epicenter of a massive global crisis. For weeks, the world has watched in shock as the United States, a nation possessing the most powerful, technologically advanced military in human history, has found itself completely bogged down here against Iran. You're probably asking yourself, how is this possible? How can a superpower that spends nearly $1 trillion a year on defense fail to secure a 21-mile stretch of water? Why can't the US just seize it, open the shipping lanes, and end this nightmare? Today, we're going to break down exactly why the US strategy failed, how their military assessments went catastrophically wrong, and why the recent collapse of ceasefire talks in Pakistan has plunged the US, Israel, and the entire globe into a grueling, long-term war. Let's start with the geography and the harsh military reality. When this conflict escalated in late February, following coordinated US and Israeli strikes, the Pentagon's initial assessment was straightforward: use overwhelming air superiority to decimate Iran's conventional military forces. And to their credit, they did. Significant amounts of Iran's traditional radar systems, air defense batteries, and conventional naval assets were wiped out. The Washington assumption was that without these, Iran would eventually capitulate, and the strait would remain open. That assessment was fatally flawed. As you can see right here on the topographical map, Iran's coastline is incredibly rugged. It is dominated by the Zagros mountain range, which is riddled with deep, hardened underground tunnels. Iran didn't need a massive conventional navy to shut down the strait. They relied on asymmetric warfare. They deployed thousands of cheap, highly mobile anti-ship cruise missiles hidden in mountain caves. These launchers drive out, fire in seconds, and retreat underground before US jets can even lock on. Furthermore, Iran heavily mined the waters and unleashed swarms of fast-attack speedboats. The US military is built to fight other massive militaries in open combat, not to play an endless, impossible game of whack-a-mole against hidden missile silos in a mountainous fortress. And, more than that, Iran heavily attacked the USA's billion-dollar military assets and important oil fields and water treatment plants of Middle Eastern countries, which forced the US military bases to retreat, costing the US around $30 billion in a month compared to Iran's few millions worth of arsenal. And still Iran fighting back. This was a big blow to the USA, and a big reason for Trump's frustration, which led to Trump's famous tweets where he used abusive words and threatened to wipe out Iran's whole civilization. This explains how he was not ready for Iran's tactical retaliation that successfully prevented the USA and Israel from achieving their objectives, even though they eliminated Iran's top leadership, along with Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei. The objectives were to change the regime in Iran that would have been more friendly to the US and Israel. But it failed miserably, which can be seen in Iran's 10-point plan, as reported by Al Jazeera to end this war, where their demands were exactly opposite of the objectives of the US and Israel, positioning itself as if it's not decimated yet. While Trump claimed that the US already won this war, the ground reality indicates that's not true when ceasefire talks were held in Pakistan. The sudden realization that military force alone couldn't secure the strait led to a desperate diplomatic scramble. For the first time since 1979, high-level US and Iranian delegations met face-to-face. US Vice President J.D. Vance and Iran's parliament speaker Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf sat down for a grueling 21-hour marathon session, mediated by the Pakistani government. The U.S. brought a 15-point plan demanding an immediate reopening of the strait and conditional sanctions relief. Iran countered with a 10-point proposal demanding a complete halt to hostilities, an end to the Israeli campaign in Lebanon, and a lifting of all sanctions. Surprisingly, Israel heavily bombed Lebanon hours after Trump announced a 2-week ceasefire, while claiming that Lebanon was not part of the ceasefire talks. This was a clear indication that there was something wrong in communication. The U.S. claimed the same as Israel, which was also clarified by J.D. Vance right before the talks in Pakistan. While Iran claimed that Lebanon was part of the ceasefire talks, which was also backed by Pakistan, which was the mediator in these talks. As the situation indicated, the talks collapsed entirely. The fundamental issue? A complete lack of trust, and demands that both sides considered absolute deal breakers. Pakistani mediators begged both parties to uphold a temporary pause, but the damage was done. Speaker Ghalibaf returned to Tehran with a chilling public statement directed at the U.S. If you fight, we will fight. Also, Israel was not along with the U.S. in these talks, which was the main key player in this conflict, which indicated that it's not going as expected by Pakistan. Also, there was an error in the Pakistani PM's tweet, where the edit history of this tweet clearly showed that it was a draft for Pakistan's prime minister, indicating that Trump is using Pakistan for a ceasefire and managing to force Iran to agree to his terms by hook or crook. Pakistan is also desperate to end this war, as it's also facing heat at home as crude oil prices rise, shocking the common people, and mainly because they are in a military pact with Saudi Arabia, which is also under attack by Iran's missiles and drones. This could lead to a situation where Pakistan has to send its military into Arabia to defend and fight against Iran, which means Pakistan is also dragged into a war in its fragile economical condition, while it's surrounded by India and Afghanistan, which are rivals to Pakistan and may launch attacks, which will further strain its military capabilities. Because of this diplomatic failure, both the US and Israel are now stuck in a grinding multi-front war. This is no longer just a surgical strike operation. Israel has had to extend ground operations in southern Lebanon to target Hezbollah, effectively fighting a two-front war. Also, the Houthis, a few days before, threatened to create another choke point near the Bab el-Mandeb Strait near Yemen, which is also supported by Iran's IRGC, and part of Iran's long-term strategy, which kept its rivals, the US and Israel, engaged far from its territory without taking a hit at home before this war. As you can see, Iran was way ahead in its strategy to hold the US and Israel's aggression in such a way that these choke points became graveyards for world trade, keeping the world economy at its knees, which creates ultimate pressure on the US and its mighty military. While the rest of the world is suffering the consequences, the global economy is bleeding. Brent crude oil prices have surged past $104 a barrel again after ceasefire talks failed. Shipping insurance rates have skyrocketed, and the supply chains that feed Europe and Asia are buckling. Middle Eastern countries that rely on these shipping lanes for their economic survival are facing catastrophic revenue losses. But we can't fully understand Iran's resilience without looking east. Why has Iran been able to sustain this fight despite heavy US bombardment? The answer lies with China and Russia. While the US and Israel try to isolate Tehran, Beijing and Moscow have been quietly keeping Iran afloat. Economically, China remains a vital lifeline, continuing to buy Iranian oil through a dark fleet of tankers. Also, as crude oil prices skyrocketed, war-torn Moscow is earning millions of dollars in revenue through its oil sales daily, which is further helping it sustain its war against Ukraine. Militarily and politically, both China and Russia have provided crucial support. In the UN Security Council, both nations have consistently provided political cover, blocking sweeping international mandates. Furthermore, intelligence suggests that Russian technical assistance has helped Iran patch the holes in its battered air defense networks, making every subsequent US airstrike riskier, highlighted by the recent and shocking downing of an American F-15E Strike Eagle. Iran is fighting with the shadow backing of two global powers who are more than happy to see the United States drain its resources. This brings us to the most recent and perhaps most dangerous development. After the Pakistan talks failed, President Donald Trump made a massive announcement. Instead of backing down, the US is doubling down. Washington announced a direct naval blockade of the Strait of Hormuz. The US Navy has been ordered to intercept any vessels trying to enter or leave Iranian ports, and to stop tankers that have been paying extortion tolls to Iran for safe passage. Adding fuel to the fire, President Trump stated that if Iran doesn't yield, the US military will begin targeting their water treatment facilities and power plants. Iran's Revolutionary Guard immediately responded, declaring that any warship enforcing this blockade will be treated as an act of war and met with a forceful response. So, what are the possibilities now? The sheer weight of a total U.S. naval blockade finally chokes Iran's economy to the breaking point, forcing them to surrender and accept American terms to avoid total infrastructure collapse, as a significant amount of Iran's military hardware was destroyed in previous strikes. And the more likely one, according to military analysts, is a catastrophic escalation. If the U.S. actively intercepts ships and Iran fires its hidden coastal missiles in response, we are looking at full-blown naval warfare in a 21-mile-wide channel. If the U.S. targets civilian infrastructure like water and power, the humanitarian crisis will be unprecedented, and the war could easily spill over into neighboring Gulf states and, surprisingly, Pakistan, which is in a pact with Saudi Arabia, which also possesses nuclear weapons. And for the world, it could become another economical disaster as more trade routes like Bab al-Mandeb are also choked by the Houthis. The Strait of Hormuz is no longer just a waterway. It is the ultimate geopolitical trap. The United States walked in expecting a swift, overwhelming victory, but instead found a geographical fortress, a deeply entrenched enemy backed by global rivals, and an economic time bomb. As the warships converge and the world holds its breath, one thing is certain. Even the most powerful military on Earth cannot easily untie the knot of Hormuz. The ultimate question is, for how much longer can the U.S. hold the blockade in the expense of world economy? And how much longer is Iran going to survive?